What's up, Audiophiles? It's Gary at Audiophile Zone. I'm here with Michael Vamos from Audioskies. What is up, Michael?
Hi, Gary. How is this thing going?
Michael is the only guy I've ever met that's from the Faroe Islands. Where the hell is the Faroe Islands anyway?
Between Scotland and Greenland, Iceland.
So it's way out.
Probably one of the smallest populations on Earth.
Right. So how did you end up in the U.S.?
I took a plane.
Well, I know that, but why? Just wanted to come over?
Unless you're into fishing or painting, there's not a lot to do in the Faroe Islands.
I mean, well, why the U.S.? You spoke English already?
Oh yeah, everybody does there.
Yeah, it's kind of like
all of Northern Europe speaks English.
Right. Okay, but now you're a high-end distributor. So let's go over some of the lines you're carrying. All right, so
yeah, so we're an importer distributor of several handcrafted European brands. And the way that I pick the brands is has to be something I want to buy myself, and it has to have a performance where it's so good that there isn't anything else near the price that is as good. Because otherwise, why are you going to buy it if there are 10 other things at the same? So that's how we pick, and it has to sound very natural, musical, organic, dynamic. So we distribute JMF Audio from France, Ideon Audio from Greece, Larsen speakers from Sweden, Gamut speakers from Denmark, and Levin Design brushes and other turntable accessories from Germany, and of course Pear Audio Blue turntables and tone arms, which is made in Slovenia.
Right, so we're going to talk today about Pear Audio. We're one of the most unique turntables on the market. I mean, there's nothing really like it, and I figured a video would be good to explain some of the very interesting design principles behind Pear Audio. So let's talk about the founder of Pear Audio. I mean, not Pear Audio, but Tom Fletcher, the designer of Pear Audio. What do you know about Tom?
Yeah, Tom Fletcher, he was a very sweet guy. You know, he was a huge music lover. He loved New Orleans jazz. So, for example, all the Pear Audio turntables are actually named after jazz musicians from New Orleans. So if you wonder why the names are so strange, that's why. And, you know, he was working on his first lathe when he was 7. You know, he was in charge of like 10 engineers at the age of 12. He was brilliant with his hands and with machinery. And he built his first turntables when he was 16. And what he wanted was basically, he believed, and I believe, I think that is the only reference. The reference is live music. You know, that's what your reference is. Your reference can't be, well, my dealer's system sounds like that. Well, that may be good or may be bad. We don't know. So his reference is live music. And the two things that is always very good in live music is dynamics and the timing. And if you lose those two, you lose the illusion of live music. You lose that. And so that's what he was chasing all his life. And, you know, first he made Nottingham Analog, which a lot of you people probably know. They sold a lot of turntables in the US and all over the world. And he realized at one point that the way that the Nottingham turntables were designed, they had reached their conclusion. Like that design philosophy and the way that they were made could not be improved any further. So he basically quit. And while he was, you know, on a break, he was sick at that time as well, a little bit. He got better and he was thinking about all these things, and he realized, well, you know, he came up with a lot of innovative ideas, and then he started making turntables again. And so Pear Audio Blue was designed and built for and with Peter Mesic, which is one of his good friends in Slovenia,
Okay,
who
we got
has
a
a
slide.
long background in turntables as well.
Right. Let me get to the slide about Peter. There he is.
Yeah, both of these guys are so nice, and they're such music lovers. They are like me, I would say, a music lover first and an audiophile second. Not that there's anything wrong with being an audiophile, just that these guys and me are interested in getting the best gear so that we can make our favorite music sound as good as possible. That's the goal. Not to listen to the gear itself, but to listen to the music. And they liked each other a lot. So not only, which is a very important thing, not only did he build and design these with and for Peter from Pear Audio, but he also gave him all his design secrets, like everything he learned in more than 40 years of making turntables is something that he gave to Peter. He also gave him his very unique measuring tools and his very unique machines for building stuff. All of this he passed on to Peter so that he could not only continue to make these, but he could actually, with this knowledge and with these instruments and so forth, he could improve further upon this as he kept working with it. And for example, the Odar, which is the current top model, is the culmination of all of that. That is, that turntable is phenomenal. So then, of course, unfortunately, unfortunately, Tom Fletcher died. He died of cancer, which was really sad because he was such a sweet guy. I mean, he basically just wanted to give everybody the gift of having live music in your house without paying a six-figure amount. And I think that's very noble, and he should be commended and remembered for that.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about some of the unique qualities of his design. So
This model here is the Kid Thomas, which is the previous top model before the Odar came out. So one of the things that is, I spoke a little bit about it earlier, is that timing and dynamics is what is always perfect at when you listen to live music. The dynamics is there. The biggest difference between playback and live music is dynamics. If you just take an acoustic guitar and you just string it, the dynamics is enormous. So you want to keep as much as that as possible when you're playing in your house to get that illusion of live music. And one of the things that Tom Fletcher had found out, and most turntable manufacturers do this, is, for example, the bearing. The bearing is metal, and the spindle is metal, hard metal. So now you are having two hard surfaces that are, fighting each other. And what he is interested in capturing is the now in the music, that split second, millisecond moment of now, where there's a pause, or, you hear how the drums or the snare drum or anything vibrations. But if the turntable is not in control of its resonances or its phase, what happens is then you repeat the moment. I mean, it bleeds into the next moment, and then you lose the pauses in the music. And when you lose the pauses, what do you lose? Well, timing for one, but more importantly, you lose the dynamics, because there is no absolute silence, because various parts of the turntable are resonating again, with a sound that's already played. So he has invented something called a sacrificial bearing. He hasn't invented, but his sacrificial bearing is very unique, which means it's a soft metal bearing and it's a hard metal spindle. Actually, the spindle is extremely complicated. It has a a changing density from the inner core to the outside. It's extremely complicated. So what happens is that instead of them fighting each other, basically the hard metal is just connecting with the soft metal. It's not too soft. It's not too hard. It's just right. He spent a long time on this just to get it right. And I think the biggest reason why they sound this good is that sacrificial bearing.
Right. I saw a video with Tom Fletcher, and he explained it that it's like, with a hard bearing on, like, for example, a ceramic surface, it's like dropping a ball bearing onto a tile. The ball bearing will bounce and the energy comes
Exactly.
back. But
That's
if you
exactly what
drop
happens.
it,
And
right,
you're totally right. What happens if you take a steel ball and you drop it on a concrete floor, it's going to bounce. So you're going to hear 2
right,
times the original effect. And you might be thinking, well, they're touching already, but we got to think of it as the difference between a turntable and every other component is that a turntable is mechanical, and the cartridge is so tiny and it's so sensitive that any little, however minute it may be in our world, for the cartridge and for the grooves, it's a huge difference. So what happens when you're using a sacrificial bearing is there's no echo of the original now, the beat that you hear. It is not early and it's not repeated. It's there and then it disappears. And that's how you get that now. That's how you get the pauses. And with the pauses, when you have absolute silence, you get the dynamic range, and then you also get the timing. And when you have those two things, it's already a phenomenal foundation. And that's just one of the parameters. So as I mentioned earlier, he had Nottingham analog earlier. And one of the things he realized was he couldn't go any further. But that didn't mean he abandoned everything. There were a few things that he still thought was brilliant about the Nottingham, and one was the low torque motor.
right. This got to be the most famous feature. Everybody's always wondering, why do you have to push the platter to get it going?
Yeah, so
And
this is a very important thing. So the low torque motor has 2 great benefits, and one is speed stability and one is silence. So if you, for example, have a motor that can correct itself or start, if it's strong enough to start a platter, that means it's also strong enough to go too fast. The motor in the Pear audio turntable is very weak, very low torque. It can only contain the momentum of the platter, which means it can't go too fast. So it can do that speed, but it does that speed perfectly. And the other benefit of this is because it's so low torque, it's separate from the plinth. It doesn't sit in the plinth. That means that you reduce the transfer from the motor to the platter by more than 90% because it's so weak.
right, and
Third
also
benefit is also that a lot of turntables, for example, have what you call speed correction, which is not helpful because what happens is, okay, the motor went a little too fast. You have something, a clock or whatever, that corrects the speed, but it already happened. That means you already heard it. So you want to eliminate as much as you can trying to correct the speed and just have it play at the correct speed the whole time.
right. I just
Because
want to
if you're
mention
correcting, you're always correcting after the fact. Like it can't correct before it goes wrong. So if it corrects once it goes wrong, you already heard it. So too late.
right. I just wanted to mention that the motor is actually on all the time, which is another feature that's unique to the Pear audio tables. The motor is actually on all the time.
Yes, it is all on all the time. And there are people that ask about this. So should I wear it? Should I unplug it? Nope. I personally, I don't have one right now because all my turntables are almost out for review or with dealers all the time. So I unfortunately don't have one right now. But my kid Thomas is 10 years old and it's on all the time. I only unplug it if I'm shipping it somewhere and then it gets turned on again. So it's been on for 9.5 years straight. It's not spinning all the time. You can just, when you touch it, you can just feel the vibrations.
Right. I did
And
notice also there's a little rubber
yeah,
piece
this is another
on.
thing he
Right.
added that wasn't on the Nottingham as well either. So there's a little bit of rubber touching the underside of the platter. And we had dealers that got it and they just pulled it out. I was like, why do you pull it out? Maybe ask me first. Actually, what it does, it creates a tiny amount of drag. That drag means that the motor actually pulls with a more constant force. It's like if you imagine there's a rope lying there. It's not anchored to anything. It's just lying very light. And I ask you to pull at a certain speed. It'll be very hard for you to pull at a constant speed because there's no resistance.
Right.
If you give a tiny bit of resistance, the pull of the motor will be more constant. So actually it improves the already great speed stability. And then if you want to go all out, we also offer, he has made a separate power supply. That way, whatever your electricity does, it's totally just ignore. I mean, it gets neglected because that I actually have here. You can see it's quite a thing. It weighs like 15 pounds. It's a very big transformer, linear power supply, and it's actually quartz driven. And with this, you can also control the speed on the power supply as well. But we have it as an optional extra so that people they don't have to buy everything at once, like they can buy it afterwards.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the features of the tone arm, which is also extremely unique.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say one more thing about the turntable.
Okay.
So even though they might look similar to Nottingham in some ways, they're actually very different. And the biggest difference, which you can't see, is that all the materials are different. So all the Nottingham is MDF.
Right.
The Pear Audio is actually made of a specific wood. It's not pear wood. Everybody thinks that it is, but it's not.
That makes sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but Tom, he kept researching and trying out different materials for the plinth. The thing is, you can never kill resonance and vibrations totally. That's not possible. Like there are people that claim this is a dead material. No, it may be dead in most frequencies, but then at certain frequencies it will have a huge spike, which is worse. So what he did was, what is the best material? He looked for materials where they all work together, because it's the same as we're talking about the sacrificial bearing. If the platter and the plinth, if those two materials are fighting each other, we're out of phase. Or if the tone arm fights the plinth, we're out of phase. So this is a new wood, which doesn't exist. All the screws are now plastic, which is very important as well. He would always, when he met new dealers, he would tell them, he would go up to them and they would take and he would really pinch their arm really, really hard on the skin, and they would be, ow. And like, why? Don't do that to my turntable. When you tighten the screws for different things to, like to put the tone arm in, you just make it snug.
Yeah,
Because
because
otherwise
also
you're squeezing, and you
right,
don't want to
also
do
very,
that.
very different approach. Most opposite of most turntable manufacturers. Like Lynn, I remember they wanted you to crank it down as much as possible.
Yeah. But Lynn, actually, Peter was the distributor for Lynn in the past, and the reason why they came up with the suspended platform was actually because there was a fault in their design. It wasn't originally the idea.
Right. Right.
But anyway, all the materials in the Pear Audio Blue turntables, they're all matched to be in a perfect marriage of materials. So the sum of all of them is more than how they are apart. So,
Right.
for example, if you notice on a Nottingham, there's a lot more metal on the arm and different
Right.
places. Here, it's Just that wood, even the platter material is different than it was on the Nottingham. So it looks similar, but it is actually very different.
Okay, let me move to the tone arm, which has also got some very unique features.
Yeah, so the first thing is that technically this is a unipivot, but it's not really a unipivot. Unipivots can,
Right.
in all directions, but this can't. So in the bearing, there are two parallel bars, which means that the horizontal movement is very, very limited, just enough for it to be able to react to grooves, but it can't, it can't do this. So it's a
Right.
very, very limited motion. That's the first thing. The other thing is that usually unipivot sits in this silicone bath, which has a slow reaction time. So he invented a new oil where it reacts immediately. There's no settling or changing or anything like that. Also, the actual shaft is carbon fiber and is lengthwise, which makes it a lot stiffer instead of wrapping them around. Another smart thing is, if you think of someone walking a tightrope, right? They have like weights at the
Right.
end of the balance bar that they're holding. So when you're looking at a tone arm, the cartridge is below the arm at the end. But usually the counterweight sits on the actual arm.
Right.
So he has recreated this with putting the actual counterweight beneath the arm, and to eliminate, again, vibrations, it actually sits in this press fit. There is no screw, there is no anything. It's basically surrounds the whole counterweight, killing any vibrations that might come from that, and it keeps it in balance.
Right. It's kind of the same thing they're thinking about. One of the things that customers always mention is no finger lift. You want to explain why that is?
Yeah. So you have to again imagine. Let's say we're looking at if you want to see the actual surface of the cartridge that hits your groove, you need a microscope. Like you can't actually see it with your naked because it's so freaking tiny that the actual point that goes into the groove. It would be as if you're holding your finger at the end of a huge jumbo jet. That's the dimensions we're talking about. So when a manufacturer takes all of this time to try to get rid of resonances, make everything work and react to the cartridge, why would you put a finger lift that weighs something and on only one side of the counterweight? Of the head shell. It basically means you're getting a lot of unwanted resonances on the right side, which you may think, well, it's not that heavy, so what difference does it make? Well, a cartridge may be set at like it's touching at 1.5 grams. So you're putting something at 2 grams on one side. It's not ideal. And he realized this, so he basically just removed it. And the way I grab it is I just grab it with, I don't know how you do it, but I do it with on my left hand. Thumb on one side and finger on the other side and just lift it in. And now when I get it turns out where there's a finger lift, I'm like, oh yeah, that's how you have to do it. It gets weird. So it's just getting used to. But even if someone wanted to have a finger lift, you basically can buy one and just put it between the head shell and the cartridge, and then you'll have
That
it.
does bother me. I use the arm lift, so what's the
Huh?
difference? I just use the arm lift, so
Yeah, what I do is I just lift it, put it in, and then I do the arm lift to put it down
oh, okay.
on
All
the
right.
surface.
I get it. Okay, so
But
that's
even
basically
if you notice, for example, the arm lift, right?
yeah,
The actual part is metal, and then he has something wrapped around it. Again, to control that little bit of vibrations that might come from that metal. Like all the screws that are around the tone arm and the bearing, they're all plastic. And it has one more unique feature, actually, that a lot of people never talk about. Normally, when you set anti-skating, you put it somewhere on your turntable and you set it at a certain value, and that's where it is.
right.
And that's great for that particular point. But it means that if you're further in or further out, you're actually off. because the anti-skating changes the closer you get to the center. So we don't have a picture of it from above, but you can look at our website. There are 2 pins with a counterweight at the end. So when the tone arm moves in towards the center, one of these pins actually moves the counterweight up. So the anti-skating, if you set it correctly, it's perfect the whole way through. It automatically adjusts as the cartridge moves across the platform. I think that's pretty smart. It looks so simple when you look at it, but it's a brilliant idea.
Well, I will say this is one of the best tone arms I've heard, and also one of the best turntables, one of the most quiet platforms for any cartridge. And it's pretty reasonably priced. But you know what I'm going to do? If you want to contact any of us, you can, let's see. Oh, I got to put in yours. It's audioskies.com, right?
Yeah. Yeah, what I think is, Tom Fletcher was really, I think he was a pioneer. I mean, he came up with a lot of these ideas a long time ago, and all these refinements that he made to the materials and the sacrificial bearing. I mean, it's brilliant. And I looked the other day. If you look, there are almost never any Pear Audio Blue used turntables for sale in the market ever. And it's because most people,
there's not too much information on them, so that's what I'm hoping. So if you want to find out more about Pear Audio, you can watch the scroll and you can see the websites. There's my website. I've got information on the Pear Audio turntables and Michael's website. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk more about these tables at some point, but we're going to end this video right now. So Michael, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just want to say one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Before we cut off, I think if you're interested in buying a new turntable, the important thing is to bring your records, your favorite music. Don't just listen to, perfect audiophile recording that the dealer or whatever has. Bring your 5 favorite records to the record store, to your dealer, and listen to them. Because if your turntable only sounds great with an audiophile recording, then there's something wrong with the design. If it's a good recording, even though it's just a regular non-180 gram vinyl, it should sound good. It shouldn't get totally punished. Your turntable should tell the difference between a good recording and a better recording, but it shouldn't make a normal recording sound horrible.
Right.
And I think I think anybody that's interested in a turntable, before you just buy the next big name brand out there, at least listen to a Pear first. If you don't still want to buy something else, that's fine. But I think a lot of people would be very positively surprised at how musical and addictive it is to listen to.
I think so. So thanks a lot, Michael. We'll be talking to you soon.
You're welcome. Take care.